And good day to you, as always, here in South Florida. Willard Shepard with In the Know, Willard Shepard Law and Media, and one of my favorite people in all of South Florida I get to spend more time with today, our Honorable Mayor of Miami Lakes, Florida, Mr. Manny Cid. Manny, welcome. It's a pleasure to see you. And as always, thank you for your service to our community and to our students over at St. Thomas.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, Willard. I appreciate the invitation. The studio looks great, man. I love this. I love the new getup, so congrats to you. This is really cool.
Well, I want to always thank our host here, the Millers, who've been an institution in our community for many years, to providing this opportunity for us to have longer discussions than we do over on NBC6 for such a long time. And to that point, big picture, I just wanted to ask you, in the environment that which we live in, and you and I talk about this sometimes, the importance of our political leaders at your level being able to actually interact with their constituents, being able to actually have relationships with them, and our politics really be what it should be. But it's so divisive on the national level, and people sometimes carry that with them. How do you break through with that and let people know you can actually get something done in Miami Lakes?
It's interesting because you can't speak to your president, right? Everybody, we go out, we vote for our president, but how many times do you get to sit down with Joe Biden or Donald Trump and just have a conversation? Doesn't happen. Same thing with a governor. How many times do residents in our community get to sit down, even for 5 minutes, with Governor DeSantis? Same thing with a county mayor, Mayor Levine Cava. It's impossible. But your local mayor makes it happen every day. And I've seen that in the town of Miami Lakes, and you could see it with the data. We polled about last year as to what the satisfaction rating was among our residents. We're at 85%. But I attribute that to the connectivity that we have with our residents, that every day we're having those conversations. And then you look at those numbers at the county level, the state level, and the federal level, they're at the floor. I mean, you're talking about 20, 30, 40% approval. But the closer that we get to the people, the better the outcome is, because we can deliver exactly what you said. When I get a resident that called me, I had a resident yesterday. He's a jogger. He runs through our community. He ran through a street in our town, and all the trees were overgrown. He sent me a picture. He goes, "Mayor, can you do something about this?" I responded to him, texted him back, "I got this." Our crews went out, took care of it. I mean, and that's the type of delivery method that we can do on the local level. We know every single other level of government takes a little bit longer, but you see that satisfaction in terms of just waking up every day and having that opportunity to make things happen for those residents, and being so close that we have to respond. I can't show up to Publix, go shopping, and have the same residents tell me every day, "Manny, my street gets flooded. Manny, I have this issue in my lake," man, and not deliver, because I'm going to see them again. So every other level of government, you can show up during campaign time, right, make promises. You might never see that person again. I see people every single week in the town, so I have to deliver. If not, I'm held accountable by our residents every day. So it's one of the joys of local government, where you have that responsibility, but you also have the opportunity to ensure that you deliver for them every day.
Is it frustrating to you to have to overcome the kinds of things, and I'm just going to basically say what many people think about politicians these days and what their reputation is?
But to a certain extent, I understand why people say it, because what happens a lot of times, there's a lot of good people that run for public office, but very few people with the capacity to make things happen. So I've realized it, and I see it with some of my council members, especially the ones that get elected recently, where they get elected, they have all these great ideas, but once they get in there, they freeze, because they don't know what to do. So now they're dependent on staff, where the reality is you're supposed to be the leader and ensuring that staff follows your lead, but now it's the reverse, and we're seeing that happen throughout the county. But I think to change that perspective that people have with elected officials, you have to create a foundation of trust where you can have those conversations. In the town of Miami Lakes, one thing that I did right off the bat, I removed the wooden door in the mayor's office, and I put a glass door. And it was symbolic as to, hey, this is your office. Whatever happens here, you can see. I kept hearing from residents, that they work 9 to 5. and City Hall was open 9 to 5. So for them to make things happen, renting a pavilion, getting a permit, just speaking to our police department, they had to leave work, miss time off work to make those things happen. I said, look, that's not fair. I mean, we're serving them, and we were the first mayoral office in the county. I've been doing this for 7 years. It's not something I just did now, where we're open the first Saturday and the third Saturday of every month. We also have a mobile office where if residents call me, we realize that there's an issue in a certain area of that town, I'll put in the police chief, the public works director, parks director, into an old police cruiser that we have, and we convert it into a mobile office, and we drive into that neighborhood, stop, everybody comes out of their homes, and we solve issues. But that's how you change those perspectives, and that's my advice to a lot of the newer elected officials. Hey, you can't just get elected and be happy to be there. Because I see that a lot of times. They're like, get sworn in, now they're happy, show up to a couple of ribbon cuttings. You got to deliver on those promises, because people instilled that trust in you, and that, to me, is sacred. So part of that is being able to be accessible and taking those opportunities that people give you to do good for the community.
I want to ask you about technology and whether it's a cell phone, smartphones, online, how you and your office and staff and the city in Miami Lakes has tried to use technology to outreach to our community and as our citizens. I always say that there's nothing good about a pandemic, but something that we learned in a pandemic, that our smart devices can be an outreach for our government in so many different ways. So just talk to me some about whether it's online or other things that you've tried to make your community more accessible so a person doesn't have to physically come to City Hall.
So when I got elected in 2016, we started realizing there's an issue with communication, talking to our residents, because we would have this email list of thousands of residents, but our open rate was like 5%. Maybe 200 people would open up the emails. And I told my staff, I go, there has to be a better way. One of those ways that we realized back then was leveraging our smartphones. So we tested it out. I told our communications director, I go, look, pull out your smartphone, open up the town's Facebook page, and open up a Facebook Live feed. She opened it up. Immediately, thousands of people logged in, and I started talking to them. And that's when we realized this is a game changer for the way that we communicate, is to leveraging that. We also have to be cognizant that not everybody uses social media, so we still have to do all the other things to ensure that folks are getting text messages, voicemails, emails, but the vast majority of our residents, we're on social media. So we went from an open rate of 200 emails to thousands upon thousands and thousands of people watching our videos live, educational videos. So we turned that into, I would host town hall meetings live on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter with our police chief, where I told folks, hey, what do you want to ask our police department? What do we need to do better? What are your concerns? And that started changing the narrative, where today every city does that. You know, when we did it, we were at the head of the game when it came to that. We were the trailblazers. Because nobody wanted to do it. Imagine you open up your phone, you don't know who's logging on, and they're asking you questions, and you have no idea what they're going to say, and it's live, right? You can't mess up. And I was like, no, people love this. People love the genuine side of politics, because I could easily do a video and they can set it up for me, make me look amazing, but it's not real, you know. So the live aspect turned it into like a reality political show, where folks were like having those conversations in real time, and people loved it. One of the issues that we had that really opened up our eyes as well, we started having some car break-ins on the west side of town, and our police major at the time was George Perez, who became the director of the police department here for a while. Now he's over the corrections. And George tells me, he goes, Manny, let's go out there, just turn on the Facebook Live. We had thousands upon thousands of people on there, and let's walk the neighborhood where these things were happening, and let's have the conversations. And we did that, and that was one of the biggest successes in our community. And today we leverage that every day to communicate. I will tell you this: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter have wised up. They changed the algorithm, so they want us to pay to have that access. So instead of having 5,000 to 10,000 people automatically jump on, they have a little bit less, but they want to monetize that. So I understand their business model, but yeah, for us, it still works, you know. So I definitely leveraging technology and doing it in a way that people feel is genuine works really well.
You mentioned stopping and halting some break-ins with cars and automobiles and other things there, and you wanted to address some crime rates and things that have transpired. And obviously, anybody that is a crime victim, it's a 100% item on you. It's not a statistic.
And you got that right. One of the things we kept realizing was that the majority of the crimes happening in Miami Lakes were occurring with people utilizing stolen vehicles, coming into our community, committing a crime. And a lot of our residents have the Ring cameras, or they have just regular cameras in their homes, and they would capture this stuff on their cameras, call the police department, give the information to our detectives. Our detectives would follow up. We had a tag, but then we would realize dozens and dozens and dozens of times that the cars that they were committing these crimes in, they would dump them off a mile or two away outside of the town, switch into another car, and they were gone. And the same thing with the tags. They would steal tags, switch it up, and then throw the tag out once they crossed out of Miami Lakes. So we wised up. They go, the criminals are wising up on this stuff. We have to wise up. We have to leverage technology. So we installed at the entrances of our community these small cameras. They're not red light cameras. They're not going to give you tickets. They're not speeding cameras, but these small cameras that when somebody comes in with a stolen vehicle or a stolen tag or a bolo or somebody's looking for them, every single car, every single police car that is on patrol at that moment receives an alert that individual has crossed into our community, and they show them where the car's at, what color the car's at, which direction they're going, and we intercepted them. It happened 2 nights ago. Somebody rode into our town with a stolen vehicle. We intercepted them and confiscated the vehicle. I think the individual jumped out or whatnot. They're still investigating that part, but we're stopping crimes every day. We've arrested already over 35 people utilizing this technology, where otherwise it would have been a crime statistic, and now we're stopping that before it happens. And we currently have the lowest crime rate in our community's history because of it.
How long have you had that in place?
We've had it about 3 years in place. Before that, there was some concerns, right? I mean, let's be real. People were concerned. I was concerned with privacy issues. The state stepped in. The FDLE stepped in with some rules. FDLE said that if the data that you're receiving from those tags can only be archived for 30 days. If there's no investigation for those tags, it has to be wiped out. But if there's an investigation, like if we arrested somebody, it stays there a little bit longer, but it follows the FDLE guidelines. So it alleviates some of those privacy concerns that people had. And the reality is your tag is public record anyways. You're getting, there's people taking pictures of it when you're on the Grantney, on the Palmetto Express lanes, whatever it may be, because it's all part of the system. It becomes a public record. But it's worked. But definitely, we've only had it about 3 years, and we keep augmenting it every single year. And it's gotten to a point that even homeowners associations, we're the first community in Dade County to do this. Homeowners associations are partnering with our police department and installing those at the entrances of their community. One community in particular stopped 2 stolen vehicles, went in there, and we were able to intercept them before they committed any crime. So that's something that our town also does. They paid for the cameras, but it's connected directly to every car that is on patrol at any given shift in the town of Miami Lakes.
And also in your community, especially on a Friday or Saturday afternoon and or evening from your city hall going west on Main Street, there's a tremendous amount of foot traffic, people out with their families, kids, all those kinds of things. I know their safety and security is a priority for you.
100%. Main Street's back, right? So in the 70s and 80s, Main Street was a place to be. There was an immense amount of competition in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s from Weston downtown, Pembroke Gardens, Doral, everything that's happening in Brickell. So a lot of people started going elsewhere. But now people are coming again to Miami Lakes. So we're really, really focusing on working with the Graham companies to ensure that everybody's safe on there, because there's restaurants that are investing millions of dollars to be there because they see the potential. Or the movie theater just received an $8 million renovation. Now you're seeing that come back to life, and I'm really excited. But yeah, that is, safety is number one. It's the number one job of local government. But yeah, we're working hand in hand with the Graham companies to ensure that folks are safe anywhere that they go in our community, but specifically when they're hanging out on Main Street, that people can feel safe, spend their money, have a good time, and know that Miami Lakes is the place to be.
Now, something that impacts all of South Florida is our rainwater, which we saw in Fort Lauderdale, even though technically it wasn't a storm, but a massive amount of rainwater. Many meteorologists believe due to global warming, climate change. We're going to roll a video here of you actually out in action as the mayor of Miami Lakes, cutting a ribbon here. Tell us about this project to protect your community. Let's hope we don't have any storms, but we always, as those of you who are the leaders in our community and our duty to transmit that message, we always have to be ready. So tell me about these projects.
So we did a community survey. We asked our residents, what are your priorities? What are the things that you're seeing in the town that are important? Number one, by far, was storm water drainage, flooding in the community. So, and I'll give you a little bit of history of Miami Lakes. The highest natural point in Dade County is in Miami Lakes. It's called Manning's Hammock, 27 feet above sea level. But everything else around it used to be swamp. It was Everglades, right? So, and part of that issue right now that we're dealing with is that the water underneath the ground has risen a bit. And again, people, they could say it's anthropogenic or not, or whatever else, but it's a reality. It's happening. The water table has risen, and it's diminished the capacity of our stormwater drains, specifically in Miami Lakes. So we realized that we have to follow our residents' lead, do what they said is the priority, is stormwater flooding, but also ensure that we're mitigating it long term. So part of the project that we did, we rolled out a $33 million drainage program where we're installing new drains throughout the community, bigger catch basins, but also ensuring that the water flows out through an outfall. So part of the issue was when Miami Lakes was developed, the county had approved these old school French drains where the water didn't go anywhere. And if now, because the capacity is diminished, where the water goes is into your garage, which is terrible. So we've ensured that all these drains are connected to outfalls going into a canal or going into a lake. So there's flow of water underneath, and it's just not stuck on your street. So we're seeing those successes happen every day. We already rolled out about 12 projects. We have another 5 under design. This is something we just did about a year and a half ago. So we're proving that local government can be effective and efficient in ensuring that these projects can happen. They're not just stuck in, hey, let's do a plan, let's study this. No, let's deliver for our residents, and we're doing that right now. So out of about 29, 30 projects, about 17 of them already either done or moving forward.
And so then you're pretty far along the way in terms of being able to provide this type of coverage, for your residents moving, going forward along those lines. You've been fortunate enough to do this. What do you say to our other communities across Miami-Dade County? Because clearly this is one of the number one issues that our county has to deal with, and being able to manage this type of water. I'll just go back and say what happened in Houston, Texas, where because there were no specific guidelines and there was just so much building and so much concrete, and we all know the expansion that has taken place basically up to the border of the Everglades. What concern do you have about that on a county-wide basis, that we don't have what basically happened in Texas, where there's nowhere for the water to go?
Look, one of the things that I tell the county is the county sometimes is stuck in an extreme bureaucracy, right? You're talking about a $10 billion organization, 30,000 employees, and they have the capacity to get these things done. But every time that there's a different commission or a different mayor or a different this or staff or whatnot, every single year there's a new plan, there's a new vision, and there's nobody there to execute anything. So that's been part of our struggle with the county, right, is to work hand in hand on some of these things, and just doing small things even in Miami Lakes. Like, we've been working on trying to put delineators on 87th Avenue, and it's been 2 years, something that takes half a day to do, right? So if they can't do that, I mean, how do you push the county to be efficient like Miami Lakes? It's not only the county. There's dozens of cities that have this same, what do they call it, paralysis via analysis, that they're constantly stuck analyzing stuff.
That rhymes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, constantly stuck analyzing stuff, reviewing things, and they never end up doing anything to mitigate the issue. So we showed how it's done. We've said, hey, we're more than happy to help out whoever we need to help to ensure that these things move forward. But yeah, it's really difficult, because if we can't execute on the small things countywide, how are we going to do the big things like mitigate stormwater flooding throughout South Florida, throughout Miami-Dade County. So we've been able to do it, and we'll be more than happy to work with any partner throughout the county to ensure that we deliver on the promises that are made every day.
Speaking of the county and moving into 2024 and some changes and things, tell me what you think the benefits may be for our county residents and those who live here, and some of these changes, how that they would impact us in terms of the way that we'll be moving forward.
Look, there could be some benefits, right? Because you have elected officials that are directly accountable to the people over some of these executive positions in the county, right? So maybe there's in that terms it could help. But what I'm concerned about is the partisanship that we're injecting countywide, right? You're talking about you're going to have a partisan tax collector, a partisan supervisor of elections. Partisan supervisor of elections in this county we've never had before. A partisan sheriff, right? That in itself, it could be a major problem for our community. I mean, you're talking about Miami Lakes, Palmetto Bay, and Cutler Bay utilize the county services for policing. What if my community doesn't vote for that sheriff, and the sheriff decides, after the 3 years to say, hey, you know what, we're done with contract cities. It happened in Broward. I mean, Broward, they raised the rates, so it's not something that's unique. So I think now we're heading into an era that we've never dealt with before in Miami-Dade County, right? Where you're taking things that are supposed to be common sense and turning them into partisan politics. Because you're going to have a Republican primary, a Democratic primary on tax collecting issues, on supervisor of elections, on clerk of courts. I mean, so forth and so on. And I think it's some uncharted territory, and I hope we don't head into a very divisive era in terms of these positions, because this stuff is local government's common sense. This is not Congress, where you can't gridlock rules the day and you don't have to deliver and you're deficit funding everything. No, this is a local government that you're directly impacting people's lives every day. So I can tell you, I'm definitely concerned, because look, we just saw Christina White, our supervisor of elections, say, hey, I don't want anything to do with that.
Right. And she has done an incredible job in terms of running our elections fairly here in Miami-Dade County, increasing the number of people who have voted by mail, and of those mail-in ballots, a scintilla of them, after vetting, turned out to be ballots that they would not officially count. It's been an incredible thing that she's done here. And
I always use Miami-Dade as a good example of how we learned our lesson, right? Remember way back when, the hanging chads or whatnot, and now we've gotten to a point where the results are ready at 7:15. We get those initial results, which I think a lot of counties throughout our nation can learn from that, right? We saw what happened. You had counties that were waiting weeks or whatnot. She did. So it's going to be interesting. So that's something that I'm very concerned about, because that divisiveness is something we've never experienced in this county before. So I hope, it doesn't start delving into our common sense policies, right? So we'll see how that turns out. I think the one positive, and there's always negatives. The negative part is the extreme partisanship of these positions. The one positive is now you're held accountable directly to the people. But what if the sheriff just says, a Democrat, he's like, man, this is my position, these Republican areas, and it could happen. We've seen what happened to the contract cities in Broward County, and how they had to shuffle. Us alone, we're so concerned that we created a committee of experts. I mean, we even have the chief of police from Sweetwater on there. We have one of the commanders from the city of Miami analyzing if we need to create our own police department, in our own standalone police department, instead of contracting with the county, which now will be the sheriff starting in 2024.
We are remiss if we don't remind our Democrats, Republicans, and independents here in the state of Florida that there was a legislative change whereby if you did vote by mail, and you used to be able to do that, and you didn't have to re-register again to do that every 4 years, that's changed to every 2 years. And Ms. White has said there are a massive number, a couple 100,000 people who now need to go back and redo that. And we just want to remind all of you in earshot and who will see this to make sure that you check your mail-in ballot and make sure that you go and re-register that, because that change has taken place. Okay, I always wanted to ask you, how did you end up being the great chef?
At Mayor's Cafe, good question. This is a real story. So, COVID hit, and I remember when the county had shut us down, shut every retailer down in the county. We lost 80% of our revenue. I mean, there was nobody, because at the beginning people were like, "Oh, no, stimulus checks didn't start happening until a little bit later." So, the first 3 to 4 weeks, I mean, there was nothing happening. I would stand, and you know where our shopping center, I mean, you've been there multiple days. I would stand at the shopping center. There was not one car moving around. There was nothing happening at all, and we had a decision to make. We were 11 months in to opening up the restaurant, and you know most restaurants, unfortunately, they fail within the first 3 years. We were 11 months in, and we didn't know what to do. You know, either turn in the key to the landlord and say, "Hey, you keep it," or roll up our sleeves. I had both jobs, right? I was the mayor during a pandemic where I had to every day be on the street. I couldn't stay home. I was working every day doing videos. If you go through our social media, I would do an update every single day to thousands of residents and talk about the breakdown from the CDC, from the state government, and visiting our seniors in their homes. But also, I had to learn how to cook. Nobody ever taught me. We had nobody to cook. So I literally had to teach myself everything, my entire menu. So for about a 2-year period, I was sometimes the main cook or one of the guys on the line every day, 7 days a week at Mayor's Cafe. But I taught myself. Today, I can walk into any Denny's, IHOP, Waffle House in the country and run the kitchen with my eyes closed.
Are you a good flipper? Can you?
Oh, that's a done deal.
Your skill set?
I messed up about a couple dozen omelets at first, but today I can make not only the omelets, but you're talking about over easy, over medium, the eggs over hard. I mean, you're scrambled, you name it, poached, whatever it is. But I can do it with my eyes closed. But the pandemic also taught us as human beings that we have to shift, and sometimes it brings out of us those adversity brings out of us things that we never knew we can do. I never thought I was ever capable of learning something like that, but it also shows the human capacity that once we're pushed in one direction, how we're able to lift ourselves up and do something. But yeah.
Do you find that from these two perspectives, because you're running a business, and also because of your relationship with your employees that you're working side by side, there's a young lady that is in there that works near the register who I've been imploring to go back and go to school. And I'm going to continue to harass her about that whenever I'm in your place about that. Do you find that just your conversations with them during the course of flipping the eggs, it gives you a perspective of, wow, this is something I need to watch out for, that if there's a way I can help people solve that issue that I might not have known about, but you hear that through your work in the kitchen?
100%. And I'll share with you this very real story. So we work closely with the Halfway House right outside of Miami Lakes. And when we hire folks out of the Halfway House, great human beings, and I never tell them I'm the mayor, right? They always start working. They'll be on the line on the kitchen with me, and we're just talking. Later on, they'll learn that I'm the mayor, and they like, oh my God,
hey, that guy's the mayor.
Yeah. So one of the things that just having conversations, like, it's changed my perspective on access to quality legal representation. I mean, those are one of the employees that we had. When I looked at his docket, this guy was a great guy, but I'm like, in my head, I'm like, man, if he had a good attorney, if he had the money to pay for a good attorney, probably would have never gone to jail. And that's when I realized that the access, the auxiliary needs, having private eyes, this, that, throughout your legal process, that how that could change. And I've seen people, look, I can give you an example of cases where people are very wealthy and they have great attorneys and they're able to not, go to jail. So if this individual had a little bit of money and was able to get a good attorney, he would probably never gone to jail, probably never been in that position. But even that's something, just having the conversations with him, seeing how great of a human being he is, seeing how great he's doing today, that changed my perspective on our legal system, where I'm like, you know what? Everybody deserves good quality legal representation, because many times if you don't have that, things can happen that to me are unfair. You know, that it's an unfair situation. So yeah, most definitely, being there has changed my perspective because I'm on the ground every day. I'm a member of the working class every day. You know, sometimes I'll share with you another story that if your elected officials don't live like the majority of your residents, sometimes that perspective gets lost. I had a 17-year-old kid come see me the other day, and he said, "Mayor, I have a problem. I take the bus to school, public bus to school every day, and to work every single day." I'm like, you know, talk to me about that. He goes, "Man, I either go to school full of sweat or wet from the rain." And I thought about it. I was like, he's right. Look at there's bus stops, maybe thousands of bus stops in the county, hundreds of bus stops in the county that have no shelter. If our elected officials on the county level were forced, instead of having drivers, were forced to use public buses, I promise you those public bus stops would have ACs. They might even have little macchiato machines or whatnot. And that's when I realized myself the importance of having the perspective of the people that you serve. You know, a lot of times people get elected, now they're having these cocktails and they're leaving. It's being at the restaurant has forced me to have that perspective and that appreciation of the working class members of our community, as sometimes their voices don't get heard. And those two examples I wanted to share with you because they're very real. The bus stop example, that's drive around now and you'll see what I'm talking about. Just I saw a couple on the way here, and on the legal side, you're an attorney, so I know, and you're a great attorney, I know you can appreciate this, but there are cases out there where just because folks can't afford great legal representation, sometimes, you know, they fall through the cracks in the system, and I think that's unfair. So is it funding our public defender's office more? Is it funding auxiliary services as private eyes, all these other things that if you had money you can afford? You know, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you
we
can
do our best to try to make sure that everybody has the representation, but the reality of it is you do see the disparities across the board with that. Mr. Mayor, always great to be with you.
It's an honor to be with you.
You inspire me because despite all that circles around in our political world, generally starting from the Washington level and coming this way, you maintain your devotion to why you got into it. And I think we all need to learn from you. So thank you very much. And thank you for being with us on In the Know here at Miami Community News. And we will be back with you shortly.